1991 saw the murder rate spike in Toronto, Canada. Altogether, 89 people were victims of foul play, and only once in the 3.5 decades since, in 2018, has there been more homicides in a single calendar year. The 61st murder victim of 1991, and the one that exceeded the previous high of 60 murders in 1989, was 21-year-old Lori Pinkus. At 9:55 a.m. on Sunday, September 8, 1991, the caretaker of Brockton High School, situated at 90 Croatia Street, near Dufferin Street and Bloor Street West, discovered a young woman in dire need of medical attention and close to death. The woman had been badly beaten and was lying on her back in a gravel car park with her arms by her side. Her eyes were wide open, and the Toronto Sun reported in 2021 that it was almost like she was on display. Paramedics were called to the scene and battled to save the woman's life, but sadly, they were unsuccessful in doing so. A local Sikh group met at the high school for their weekly worship, and many saw the woman before the police arrived. According to the Toronto Star, one witness who lived locally and only spoke Portuguese, there was a large Portuguese community in the area, told her daughter the woman was wearing only a halter top. Toronto Police Service officers, TPS, from the 14th Division, recognised the victim as Lori Pinkus, who was a local sex worker. She was a familiar figure in the area and was known to ply her trade on the corner of Bloor Street and Lansdowne Avenue. This was just a 10-minute walk west from where Lori was found. Lori died the day before her 22nd birthday. Homicide detective Sergeant Tony Watt said it was too early to speculate about the cause of death, and they were awaiting forensics to determine if Lori had been sexually assaulted. Early unconfirmed reports indicated she had been strangled, and indeed an autopsy would later confirm this. Many reports say that Lori was assaulted before she was killed, but I think this is referring to a physical beating. It is unclear if a sexual assault was ever officially confirmed by law enforcement. From later evidentiary developments, which I will go into shortly, it is a strong possibility she was. Hi, it's John here. I live in Wales, UK, and I research, write and produce Persons Unknown podcast. It's a true crime podcast dedicated to unsolved murders and missing persons cases from all over the world. If you'd like to become a supporter of the podcast, please see the link in the show notes. If you enjoy the podcast, please consider leaving a review on your app. They make a real difference and I love reading them. Thank you so much for listening. Now back to this week's episode. Lori Marilyn Pinkus was born on September 9, 1969, in Canada's capital city, Ottawa, to parents Harry and Doris Pinkus. She was the youngest of 9 children, which included 2 sets of twins. Lori's mother Doris ran a scrap metal company. Lori dropped out of school in grade 10, age 15 or 16. During her mid-teens, Lori became involved in sex work to fund a growing crippling addiction to alcohol and cocaine. At age 17, she moved out of her family home in North Gower on the southern fringes of Ottawa. From what Doris later publicly says, it is not clear whether she knew her daughter was a sex worker. In an article from the Ottawa Citizen from September 10, 1991, Doris says she couldn't recall if Lori had told her she was doing sex work. Doris does add that it would not have made her judge Lori, and she always loved her daughter. For the next few years, Lori bounced from place to place. Many of the other girls and young women who were friends with Lori and also involved in sex work managed to get out of that world by the time they turned 20. Lori, on the other hand, was trapped. Friends tried to reach out and help her, but eventually gave up. Laurie seemed to get sucked deeper in. Laurie developed coping mechanisms to deal with the harsh reality of life on the streets. She had a reputation of being a loner and a hothead. Laurie stood at just 5'1", but had a formidable temper, which she could lose quickly. Perhaps this was her way of dealing with the daily challenges she encountered as a sex worker. Laurie was in a constant battle with addiction. She tried to get sober many times, but the drugs always seemed to creep back into her life. Her struggles were well known in the community, culminating in a violent incident. In February 1989, Laurie's 23-year-old brother killed a man following a fight over his association with his sister. Laurie was out drinking with a 32-year-old man named Dale Groff in a cabin on the Gatineau River near Wakefield on the East Shore. At this time, Laurie was supposed to be in a rehabilitation program. The brother got wind of what was happening and turned up at the cabin. The two men started arguing because the brother could see that Groff was encouraging Laurie to drink. Things got heated and Groff pulled a gun, but it was Groff who ended up being shot dead. Laurie was a witness to the body being dropped from a bridge into the river. The brother pleaded guilty in a Quebec court to manslaughter and was sentenced to 8 years in prison. As we will see, this was by no means the only tragedy to strike the Pinkus family. Life was tough on Laurie as she continued to struggle with drink and drugs. Things started to look more hopeful in the fall of 1990 after Laurie returned to school to get a high school diploma. This was part of the Futures program, which was funded by the provincial government. Laurie was paid $5.40 an hour to complete her diploma part-time, alongside working a steady job. Laurie's counsellor was very pleased with her progress, and Laurie looked determined to succeed and turn her life around. She was achieving good grades and had aspirations of becoming a hairdresser or secretary when she graduated. Everything changed in March 1991, when Laurie abruptly quit her academic course and moved away from Ottawa for good. The reason behind the sudden decision lay in the fact Laurie's life had almost been taken in a previous violent incident. On August 22, 1990, Laurie suffered several chest wounds following an alleged stabbing at a Morissette Avenue apartment in Ottawa. It was this incident that caused Laurie to reassess her life and sign up to the Futures program. In connection with the alleged stabbing, a 23-year-old man from Gloucester and a 22-year-old man from Vanier were arrested and charged with attempted murder. I should say both these places were independent cities, but are now part of East Ottawa. The case was scheduled for trial. However, Laurie did not show up to court on the designated day. As the alleged victim, she was the main witness for the prosecution, and so the trial was abandoned. It was rescheduled for March 1991, but yet again, Laurie did not attend. Instead, she fled to Toronto. As a result, the charges were dropped against the 23-year-old man from Gloucester because of Laurie's failure to show up on 2 occasions. He had been charged with aiding the other man in the alleged attack. The attempted murder charge remained in place for the 22-year-old man from Vanier. Soon after, a bench warrant was issued for Laurie's arrest. This type of warrant is given by a judge for contempt of court or failure to attend. In response, Laurie dropped out of her school program and fled to Toronto Metro for a new start. The Ottawa Citizen, September 10, 1991 edition, says that a warrant was also issued for Laurie due to a breach of her probation conditions, namely the failure to attend rehab. After Laurie moved to Toronto, her mother didn't hear from her daughter for quite a while. Eventually, Laurie did make contact over the phone and told her mother, "I love you," and asked, "Do you still love me?" From then, Laurie would occasionally touch base with her mother over the phone. Fearing that Laurie was backsliding on her sobriety, her mother Doris wanted Laurie to go into rehab. Doris reserved a place for her daughter at a facility in Toronto. It was booked for April 1991. Laurie didn't show up and told her mother she had a job working at the Westin Hotel in downtown Toronto. Laurie soon fell back into old habits and hung around with the wrong crowd. She began abusing drugs and perhaps inevitably turned to sex work to make the money she needed. A few months after Laurie had left for Toronto, another tragedy hit the family when older brother Ronald died suddenly, aged only 28. This was a loss that affected Laurie. So how did Laurie end up murdered and her body left in the grounds of Brockton High School? Police theorised that she had gone to the area looking to buy drugs. The spot was a well-known hangout for drug users and for drug dealers to peddle their wares. This was just a 10-minute walk east of the corner of Bloor Street and Lansdowne Avenue, where Laurie stood, looking for customers. The questions investigators had to consider were: did Laurie know her killer? Did she meet someone on the way to buy drugs? Or was she simply in the wrong place at the wrong time? Had the murder been a random attack? Indeed, these are questions law enforcement continue to ponder today. TPS began to put together a picture of Laurie's life in the weeks prior to her murder. Medical records showed that Laurie had recently spent a stint in hospital with pneumonia. Laurie was officially listed as having no fixed abode, but 2 weeks before her death, she had moved into a basement apartment on Dufferin Street with her new 29-year-old boyfriend. This was just a few blocks from Brockton High School, where she was found. Both Laurie and her boyfriend were listed as unemployed. The boyfriend told police the last time he saw Laurie was at 6 a.m. on Saturday, September 7th, when she left the apartment to buy some cigarettes. He didn't know Laurie was dead until Monday morning, when police burst into his apartment and asked him to raise his hand slowly to his head. When told about Laurie's death, he couldn't believe the news. The boyfriend said he and Laurie had made plans to celebrate her birthday that evening by going out to play pool and have some drinks. With this in mind, police were keen to find any sightings of Laurie from Saturday, September 7th. Police did find some reports of what Laurie did on Saturday. Police contacted Laurie's mother and informed her of the awful news about her daughter. They learnt from the 61-year-old Doris that on Saturday afternoon, Laurie had telephoned home. During the conversation, Laurie had said, quote, "If I die, would you take care of it? Will you bury me?" At the time, Doris didn't attach any significance to these words, but in hindsight, it seemed more than a little odd and an incredible coincidence. Did Laurie know her life was in imminent danger? What was doubly distressing for Doris was that earlier in the week, Laurie had phoned her mother and said she wanted to come back to Ottawa for a visit that weekend. Unfortunately, Laurie couldn't afford the bus fare. Doris had almost volunteered to pay, but hadn't. She now wished she had. Police got confirmation that Laurie had been to a local bar on Saturday night. She was last seen leaving the bar with friends early in the hours of Sunday, September 8th. Unfortunately, I have no more details about this. Those are Laurie's last known movements until she was found clinging to life in the car park of Brockton High School. Doris Pinkus spoke publicly to several newspapers, saying, quote, "No matter what a woman is, she has the right to live. Nobody deserves to die like that, especially Laurie. She was very kind, perhaps too kind." She remarked on her daughter's quick temper and said although Laurie wasn't tough, she was convinced her daughter would have fought back against her killer. In the immediate aftermath of the murder, TPS remained quite tight-lipped about the investigation. Doris Pinkus told the press that the police had asked her if Laurie was acquainted with members of the motorcycle gang, the Outlaws. Doris herself knew members of the gang and individuals who were part of the Hells Angels. She told the Ottawa Citizen that they were good people. Two of Laurie's brothers went to Toronto themselves to see if they could find out anything about the murder. In response to some public comments Doris made, the brothers said they did not go to take the law into their own hands, but to find out from the police what was going on. Ultimately, they returned without too much new information. In wake of Laurie's death, it was announced that the attempted murder charge against the 22-year-old Vanier man had been dropped. To be clear, this is regarding the alleged stabbing of Laurie at her apartment in August 1990. Assistant Crown Attorney Donna Eastwood told a judge that Laurie's testimony was essential to the case against the man. It's important to note that the charges were dropped against the man days before Laurie was murdered. Prosecutors expected Laurie would ignore any subpoena requiring her to testify, so the case was dropped. There is very little information about the investigation into Laurie's death, though it seems many persons of interest were looked at and subsequently eliminated. For many years it appeared that the case had been completely forgotten about. That, however, was not so. In 1991, there had been a thorough scientific and forensic inspection of the crime scene and body. Back then, technology was not at a place to help investigators, but 3 decades later, things had changed. In May 2018, 27 years after Laurie was murdered, Detective Sergeant Stacey Gallant of the Toronto Metro Homicide Squad announced that they now had a strong male DNA profile linked to Laurie's murder. I do not know what the source of the DNA was, i.e. blood, semen or something else, but it was found at the crime scene at Brockton High School and believed to belong to the killer. The profile was run through Canada's National DNA Databank. This has been in operation since 2000 and now contains over 400,000 profiles taken from blood, saliva and hair following an offender's conviction. There was no match in 2018, and repeated attempts have produced no result. Detective Sergeant Gallant confirmed that no one had ever been arrested for the crime, but he was convinced that there was someone out there he knew who was responsible. In 2018, he called on the public to provide a name to test the DNA profile against. He estimated the suspect would be older than 50. This development saw one of Laurie's older brothers, Larry Pinkus, speak publicly for the first time about his sister's murder. Larry was interviewed by a journalist from Canadian news site Global News. The pain he still feels was very evident, and the hurt from that horrible event was still there. With the DNA breakthrough, there was clear expectation that an arrest would follow, but this did not happen. It has been very quiet in the 8 years since the DNA reveal, and there have been no major developments to report. Laurie's grave is at Pinecrest Cemetery, Ottawa. She was laid to rest in plot section 7, near her older brother Ronald. Doris Pinkus was also buried there when she passed away. If you have any information about the 1991 unsolved murder of Laurie Pinkus in Toronto, you can contact the Toronto Police on 416-808-7400 or Crime Stoppers on 416-222-8477.